Welcome to the Porn Reboot Podcast, where you get practical tips to gaining control over your porn or sex addiction. We help ambitious men end their out-of-control sexual behavior with pornography, sex, and masturbation so that you can maximize your life, perform at your potential, and remain in control in the driver's seat, which is where you have to be in order to gain or maintain the success you want in life. I'm your host, J.K. Emezi, certified sex and porn addiction recovery coach. Welcome to the episode.
Today we're going to talk about thinking big and the stages of your reboot, a continuation in the series on success and the different stages of your reboot from your out-of-control behavior with porn, sex, and masturbation. What is thinking big? The way I define thinking big is your ability to create goals that scare you and to actually go for them. All of us at one point were young boys who had big dreams. I don't care what your dream was. It may not have even been financial in nature. It could have been a dream to date a beautiful model. It could have been a dream to live in a beautiful house. It could have been a dream like mine was just to be able to buy enough candy or buy enough certain types of food. They were just little things. We all have one thing that when we were growing up, it was a luxury to us. Sometimes it was food. Sometimes it was going to the movies, different things. And when you become an adult and you make some money, you just indulge in those things. This is like that, but multiple steps ahead. These are the things that you saw and there was an emotional response within you. You may have seen it on TV. You may have heard a story about it. You may have read a book about it. You may have, whatever the case may be, there was an emotional response and you were like, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to that country. I'm going to be with a woman like that. I'm going to have an experience like that. I'm going to live in that place. I'm going to help those people who are suffering, whatever it may be. At some point, you lost that. I'm not saying that pornography is the only thing that led to you being where you are or led to you thinking small. But let's be honest. If you have something in your life that is largely a secret, that you cannot even think big enough to remove from your life, how do you expect to be able to accomplish your biggest goals? Your biggest goals that you don't have a clear path to accomplish. That's the thing about thinking big. When you think big enough, there is no clear path to get to that goal. You are motivated by emotional energy alone. And eventually, by sheer emotional energy, you begin to find the right people, find the right things you need to learn, and you begin to align yourself with the things in the world around you that would lead you there. But without that emotional energy, you're going to get pulled down. Pulled down by who? Well, by everyone around you, by the news, by the, you've heard of the tall poppy syndrome, crabs in a barrel, taking somebody down a peg. Society and the world around you will check you. When you say things, they'll just look at you and roll their eyes, and you're not going to be able to do it. When you can't even imagine yourself being a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years away from your out-of-control sexual behavior, brother, you do not have what is necessary not to just think big, but to actually go for those goals. I remember there was a time that for really the first part of my 20s, I would have all these ideas of the type of person I wanted to date, so many things. And the way people put me down a peg was so violent. And by violent, I mean like emotionally violent. I'll be clear with y'all. The woman that I'm with right now is my ideal woman. Not only is she my ideal woman in terms of looks, like she's a model in heels. She's taller than me. She's beautiful. She's fit. She works out. She's a very caring and loving person. She comes from a family where she cares for her mom and her dad. Family is super important to her. She comes from a conservative culture. She doesn't cuss. She doesn't even eat meat. I didn't ask for that, but it's cool with me too. She doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs. None of that. Like, wow. The very woman that I envisioned for myself. Now, there was a time when guys would take me a peg down because they just didn't think I was deserving of women like that. They would just laugh when I would say, man, I'm into that girl, in my early days. They would just laugh because they would just look at me with my body odor, my weird posture, weighing about 120 to about 140 pounds. I was a skinny dude. I looked like I was on drugs, but I wasn't. I just lived a very unhealthy life and I didn't take care of myself. And this was in my early 20s. It was like this guy just talks shit. And I talked a lot of shit. When it came to the things I wanted to do, when I told them like, hey, I'm going to go sell door to door because I'm not doing well in college, I remember them just looking at me and shaking their heads. It was almost as if they were like, you're getting into a scam. And you know what, bro? You're the type of idiots that would fall for a scam, like going off with some strangers to sell door to door, sell Bibles door to door. You're probably going to sell drugs. It's going to suck. Sales is hard, man. You're not cut out for that shit, dude. Dude, it's got all these things they told me. But deep within me, there was this little ember, this little coal that I just kept feeding because I knew I wanted something. And maybe the same thing has happened to you. Maybe you have failed so much. And when I say failed, I don't mean that you're broke. You could be well off. You could have a family. You could have all those things, but you're sitting around, looking around you and go like, fuck this. I didn't want to be in the suburbs. I don't want to live this life. I wanted more. And I just don't know when I stopped dreaming. I don't know whether it was when I had my second kid. I don't know whether it was when I graduated from college. I don't know when. But I do know one thing. I have a problem with pornography, and that is not even allowing me to have clarity. I have one thing in my life that is a constant failure, regardless of how far I've gone in life. And it was so abundantly clear for me. I was at a point where I was just mad with myself. I was angry with myself because I was unable to end my behavior. I still had these thoughts, but I was constantly being reminded by these people that I didn't deserve to think big. And that just made me angry. So I kept working on myself. So what happens at the different stages of your reboot when you're trying to think big, when you're trying to create that life? Oh, and by the way, I've created that life for myself. I am often in different locations, in the exact place that I want to be. Sometimes holding my girl's hand. I remember one day just waking up next to my girl, just on a cliff overlooking. It was a private villa. We had a staff. This was actually early this year. We had a staff overlooking the ocean. And I was like, oh my God, we're here. And I and my girl have this thing where we'll work hard towards something. And she meditates, I meditate. We'll meditate and then we'll go for a walk. Usually somewhere that we're traveling or we've accomplished something on our dream board. And I highly recommend you guys have a dream board or a vision board. And we'll look at each other in that moment, take a deep breath, and we'll say, we're here. We're here. Like we're here. It's a reminder to be present. This will not last forever. We're going to lose this all. It's all going to pass. You can't hold on to these things. But in that very moment, you can enjoy it. You can do it. It is a affirmation to ourselves in that moment that when we put our minds to something, we can accomplish it. Now, don't get me wrong. I was never like this, and neither was she. We were not like this. It was something that we had to work towards. I, in particular, I had to work very, very hard to not only get certain things, to think big, to accomplish those things, but to stay unattached to them. And this is important to say. I don't care what it is you're getting in your life. The wife, the kids, the house, the job, all those things. You will get old. You will die. It is all going to go away. Everything will pass. Your kids will leave home. Your wife may leave you. She may pass away. You may pass away. But one thing is for sure. We're all going to die. And we can't keep any of these things. So what can we do? All we can do is in the moment, make sure that we are living to the fullest and really believe in the best for our futures. And when I say the best, brother, I mean the best. If this is our one shot at this thing, let's go all out. Let's not look at other people. Let's stop being spectators. Like, oh, let's look at those people and wish we could be always, must be nice. Stop that shit. You have arms, you have legs, you have ears. You can hear me do this. You can go out there and do whatever you want to do. Think big. Now, if none of this makes sense to you or it just sounds like some motivational mumbo jumbo, then the rest of this episode is definitely for you. Because in the early stage of your reboot, which you're probably at, if none of this is relatable to you, you are stuck regretting past mistakes, regretting your poor decisions, regretting all the lost opportunities. That is what you are constantly doing. And here's the crazy thing. It doesn't matter how successful you are. As a matter of fact, today I had a conversation with a brother in the intensive group who had joined the program and didn't do jack shit because he thought that he was going to throw money at the problem. He joined, he got some good results for about 2 months, and then he just allowed his work to take him away. He just disappeared from everything. Nobody could reach him. He thought that by investing thousands of dollars into something, somehow he would magically be healed. Finally, he came to his senses. Came around. He came around because I called him and I was like, dude, stop fucking around and wasting your money. And those of you who may not know me, nothing pisses me off more than somebody who throws money at something. I feel that that's a person who doesn't respect money. I don't care how they made their money, right? I came up with nothing. I have created an opportunity for men that I did not have. And I spent a lot of money on things that did not work. I think it's crazy when somebody just drops money on something and just doesn't take advantage to it. It's so irresponsible. So anyway, I called him out and we were having this conversation. He's at a good place in his life, so he thinks. And he told me, man, as we were talking, and we were about an hour into the conversation, he said, dude, I just feel a lot of emotion right now. I was like, well, what's the primary emotion? And he said, it's anger. I was like, well, what are you angry about? He says, I am just angry about all the decisions I made in the past. I'm angry. I feel like people didn't tell me the truth. Nobody showed me the right path. And now you're saying all these things that make sense. And I'm mad because those people were supposed to tell me those things. Not my porn reboot coach. Nobody thinks they're going to get a porn reboot coach in the future. Why didn't these other people tell me these things about success, about other aspects of my life, right? I feel like I wasted so much money on different coaches and different mentors in different areas of my life. And you're the guy telling me those things. But that's because this brother, despite his success, was still in his early reboot. And he was also angry because I just demonstrated to him during that hour how he could be so much further along. And it suddenly clicked to him because he then realized that he only joined the program because he had a moment of clarity at some point last year where he suddenly saw that, oh my God, the only thing holding me back is this behavior and the shame and the guilt and all the emotions that comes with it. I'm a stud in everything else, but being a stud has kept me at a 6/10 when I could be a 10/10 or a 9/10. Being a stud is 6/10. Like everyone around me is just like, oh, damn, you're awesome. You're great. You're all these different things. But my standard is a 9 or a 10/10. And the only thing holding me there was pornography. He had regrets. If you're in the early stage, if your emotion when it comes to thinking big is, dude, I can't even think big, dude. I miss my ex. I wish I didn't act out the way I did with pornography and lose my relationship. I wish I didn't spend that amount on Bitcoin or NFTs or some dumbass investment where I lost what I believe is a lot of money. I wish I paid attention to that other guy when he showed around and talked about that opportunity. I wish I moved to that city. I wish I did all those things. You're living in the past. Fuck that. Let it go. Move forward. That's early reboot shit. Now, what happens when you're in the middle reboot when it comes to thinking big? Well, one of the things that I notice with a lot of professionals is that there's a tendency to keep trying to match the thing you did when you were doing your best. So let's say you had, let's talk business or earnings. Let's say you made a certain amount of money. Let's say 1 year you made like, whatever, $125,000 in commissions. And when you're in the middle stage of your reboot and you're trying to think big, you can't think beyond that. That was as big as you could go. In fact, you start realizing, oh, well, there were certain circumstances that led to that commission. You know, it was like a particularly good year. A lot of people quit in the company, and I hung out there. There was this regulation or this thing was changed. You're giving excuses for the success. You actually don't believe in yourself and your ability to think big. So you keep trying to match that. Like, yeah, I want to make 125. You should be going for 250K. You should be going for $500,000 a year. But no, because that's the potential. There's a top guy who's doing that, but you're not going to do that. You want to maintain. Hey, what's your goal? I just want to, dude, I just want to maintain, bro. I just want to if I can hit my best from last month, if I can hit my best from last year, I am my best from yeah, that would be awesome, right? If I can maintain that into the future, that's realistic. You're not thinking big, brother. Middle reboot behavior. Late reboots, it's a little bit different. Guys here are thinking differently. Usually you'll see guys aiming for something a little bit more conservative, aiming for, 10% growth. They're like, you know what, if we can grow 10% each year in our earnings, in our business, in our clientele, in the number of products we sell, whatever it may be. And, that means we're doubling every decade. That's not bad. And to be honest with you, that isn't bad. I think that's a great place to be. And there are a lot of very successful people who are absolutely doing a great job in whatever industry they are by aiming for 10% growth. And, most business advisors, most people in your industry will tell you that, 10% growth year after year, that's good. Personally, I told my CFO the other day, as a CFO that manages different businesses for me, came in and she was like, oh, you had like a few percentage growth here and that's pretty good. Oh, it was a review she was sending me. I flipped out. I called her and I was like, let me remind you of one thing. We think big around here. We think big. We're not just here to be on earth to do a little bit of growth here and there. No, we work too hard. We care too much. Across everything I do, I care too much. I want to do well. I want to help people. I want to over-deliver. That's the level at which I work. That's the level of everybody around me. And if you're okay with itty-bitty tiny increments, if you're okay with, oh, well, my client didn't really end his behavior per se, he still slips and relapses sometimes during his maintenance stage. No, that is not what you're supposed to do. When you get to the maintenance stage, you are done with your behavior. You are done. If you're in the maintenance stage and beyond, and you relapse, and there is no traumatic issue that could be found there, which is usually the only reason, nothing traumatic that happened in your life, then that was a choice. You chose to go back. You were like, I'm going to watch pornography. Oh, no, this isn't fun. It isn't fun. My dick is not responding to it. Don't like it, but I know that something pleasurable happens. I don't give a shit. You have some sort of weird death wish, and you need to go see a psychiatrist. If you do that, we aim for men to end their compulsive behavior permanently, nothing less. I know you guys have heard me talking a lot about men who slip here and there. I'm just explaining what happens to men. When you hear me say those things in previous episodes, I'm explaining the realities of what happens to men along the journey. You're going to slip here and there, but ultimately that shit needs to stop. That's what you're learning here. So again, I just checked her on that and I said, listen, we work on the next level. The next level is what I'm going to talk about in the maintenance stage. Men who are at the maintenance stage, when it comes to thinking big, I'll make it clear, and I'm very confident about this one because this is where I live right now. You realize that it is easier to hit your biggest goals right now, today, this month, than it is to grow incrementally. Your self-image has changed. That's why you can think that way. I'll say it again. When you are in the maintenance stage, when it comes to thinking big, you're not thinking about 10% growth. You're not thinking about improving a little bit because you understand it has nothing to do with those things. It has everything to do with your self-image. Early in this year, 2024, I told you guys about how I hit my goals year after year because there was a training I used to do called How to Make the Next Year Your Best Year Ever. And I stopped doing that. I stopped doing that because men were just not doing shit with their years. And I was like, you know what? Fuck that. I've spent way too much time training people on this. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just going to tell you exactly what I did. And what I do and what I'm doing right now is I ask myself a very simple question. For the year of 2024, for the year of 2025, who is it that I will become at the end of the year? Who will I have to become in order to accomplish all these goals that I've written down for myself? I'm not worried about how I'm going to accomplish the goal. I just look at the man I will become, the man who has accomplished all those goals. Then I dive deep into that. What are his values? What's his work ethic like? How does he sleep? How does he talk to his partner? How does he relate to his friends? What's his spirituality like? What's his health like? How does he think? All these little things, those are the things I look at. And then I reverse engineer it. I start becoming the man from the end of the year today. I start doing that immediately. Now, when you do that, it's a self-image change. If you struggle to do that, you're probably in the early stage of your reboot. And your self-image is not congruent with that. So the man that you think you're going to be at the end of the year, if you're in the early stage of your reboot, you can't even visualize that. If you came into our program and our reboot heroes asked you like, hey man, where do you want to be a year or 2 years from now? You could even tell him. You'd say shit like just feeling better, happy, making more money, more motivated, maybe have a girlfriend. There will be nothing definitive. You wouldn't be able to say any of the things that you actually want because you're so lost. This is including those of you who purportedly think that you have your shit together. Those of you who are making 85, 150K a year, you think you have your shit together, but you're stuck. You're still in the early stage of your reboot. I've spoken to men at that level who still cannot define what they want their self-image to be like at the end of the year. So once your self-image has changed, which begins from the middle stage of your reboot and continues all the way through, but it culminates, all of that happens from the maintenance stage onwards. It solidifies. At that point, you realize that if you want to hit your biggest goals, it happens now, right now. Because all you need to do is embody the self-image of the man who's hit those goals. And you start walking around, you start talking, you start acting like him, because you also have the confidence in your ability to deliver. It is easier to hit your biggest goals now than it is to do I'm going to be realistic and grow by 10%. And that comes from rebooting. It comes from changing your self-image. I did not have the ability to do any of these things or think this way till I rebooted. That's how it happened for me. Maybe there's some other way you're going to improve on your self-image. But I'll tell you this, if you got that shame, if you got that guilt, if you have all that crap weighing you down, if you're playing the game of pretending that you also don't have shame and guilt because you're apathetic, because you're in a relapse cycle, you're like, oh, well, I felt nothing, JK, when I slipped. I felt nothing when I slipped. Bro, that means that you've just depleted most of the neurochemicals. When you're in a relapse cycle, you're not going to feel shit. You're really not going to. You will get to a point where you don't feel guilt, you don't feel shame, you feel nothing. In fact, you might even have what you might consider to be a great day after you slipped the night before. You're like, hey, I think I'm okay. No, you're not. No, you are not. Those emotions are going to come back. You really think the guilt and shame that had you listening to episode 600 and whatever the fuck of this episode of this podcast, you really think the thing that got you this far just disappeared? No, my brother, it is still there. You gotta work on your self-image. All right, enough. The next episode, we will go deeper into success and the different stages of your reboot. As I've said, I'd love to hear back from you guys. All right, I don't like yelling out into the void. Send me an email. All you need to do is put in the subject line podcast and email jkemezi@elevatedrecovery.org. You can just do it on your phone. I'm going to respond. My assistant has been instructed to just put those aside in a special folder, and we'll just have a back and forth. We'll chat. I want to improve on this. I want to answer your questions. I want to find out if this is relatable, because this is not from you guys. This is from guys who are in my program, who have been through the program over the past 12 years and my experiences. So I'd love to hear if you find this relatable. Appreciate you. Bye.
I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Porn Reboot podcast. I'll speak to you later on in the week. If you found this episode helpful, here are 4 ways I can help you with your out-of-control sexual behavior for free. The first way is to grab a free copy of my book, Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men at elevatedrecovery.org, or visit the link in the description below this episode. The second way is, if you're not sure where to start, but you'd like to learn more about my team and I, if you'd like to spend time with like-minded professionals and business owners who are controlling their behavior, then join our free and confidential group, the Porn Reboot Group on Facebook. There's a link to join in the description below this episode. The third way is, if you need help right now because you have a burning issue, your behavior with pornography is hurting you mentally or emotionally, you're about to lose your relationship, you want to live up to your potential, be an authentic man, and free yourself from shame, guilt, and underachieving, then click on the link in the description below this episode that says free coaching call. And the fourth way is to leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy this podcast, so that we can reach more men who are struggling in silence and bring back the lessons we learn from coaching them to freedom.